Hello and thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm John Hernandez. Brandis Freeman is on assignment. Here's what we're looking at. Navigating an unpredictable economy amid a conflict in the Middle East.
Something I've been wanting to tell you.
And the movie Sinners brings the blues to the Oscars this weekend. We talk with some members of the Chicago blues community about the future of the music genre. First off tonight, authorities say the suspect in a shooting at Temple Israel in West Bloomfield, Michigan is dead. It all unfolded when a vehicle rammed into that synagogue complex in the suburb outside Detroit before the driver allegedly began exchanging gunfire with security. The complex also includes an early childhood center in the school, but officials say no children or staff were injured. The FBI says federal agents are assisting the investigation, and Michigan State Police say they're increasing patrols at other places of worship in the area. And domestic violence homicides increased by 15% last year. That's according to the Chicago Police Department. In a news conference today, Cook County State's Attorney Eileen O'Neill Burke announced the launch of a new domestic violence homicide unit. Last year alone, at least 63 Chicagoans, mostly women, lost their lives in domestic violence incidents. Burke says the Bureau will focus on supporting survivors and connecting them with critical services.
This new unit will have a dedicated victim witness person who will approach this work with a trauma-informed perspective that gives victims and their families a shoulder to lean on during this incredibly difficult moment.
And Governor Pritzker visited Kankakee County today and met with local officials and emergency responders. The damage in Aroma Park, which is a suburb of Kankakee, was extensive, with a stretch of homes completely destroyed in Tuesday's storm. At least one person is hospitalized with injuries caused by the severe weather. The governor says he does not anticipate any problem getting federal disaster relief.
Politics shouldn't play any role in addressing emergencies and crises that exist across the country or in the state of Illinois. I have some confidence here because I think it's pretty obvious that the damage here is devastating. And I think that the fact that it's evident just by looking at pictures, really, or walking around, you can see that this community needs help.
Officials say they expect power to be restored to all homes in the area by tonight. Now, if you've ever wanted to swim in the Chicago River, maybe this is your year. Chicago's open water swim returns for a second year on September 20th, and it's all for a good cause, raising money for ALS research and supporting the Chicago Park District's efforts to expand free swim lessons and water safety education for kids across the city. Participants will have to apply for one of 500 spots to take on either a 1 mile or 2 mile course along the river. How fun! After last year's swim proved successful, Mayor Brendan Johnson says the city is planning a full week of events leading up to the swim.
This moment symbolizes the incredible progress that Chicago has made in restoring the health of the Chicago River. Just a generation ago, this type of event was unimaginable.
Registration opens on March 31st and will close on April 27th. Up next, what you need to know about the stock market. That's right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Alexandra and John Nichols family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
Volatile is the word many are using to describe the economy these days. War in the Middle East is disrupting oil prices, and tariffs are still adding a layer of uncertainty to trade. Meanwhile, stocks are down to start the year. The S&P 500 is down 2.5%. The Dow is down nearly 3%, and the Nasdaq is down nearly 4% since the beginning of 2026. Joining us to discuss what all that means are Danielle Moore, a financial advisor at Savant Wealth Management, and Tatassos Miliaris, a professor of economics at Loyola University of Chicago. Can you pronounce your name? I almost got it.
Perfect. It was good.
I appreciate it. So there's a lot to talk about.
Yeah.
Danielle, I want to start with you. For viewers who might not have paid attention to the stock market trends, What has been happening in the stock market since the beginning of the year? What should they know?
Very fair question. I think you summarized it well in the beginning by saying there's a lot going on. So the markets have been uneven. The reason we'd say they're uneven is because the market is constantly assessing the price. What discount do I want to pay today to enter the market for future profits, right? So there's a lot of uncertainty in regards to this ongoing war in Ukraine. We've got conflict in the Middle East with Israel, the US, Iran. There's a lot of uncertainty that changes by the day, by the minute, and all that's factored into the pricing of the market, as well as we've got inflation, we've got all kinds of information coming out of the political administration on a daily basis. This is just never ending. Tariffs.
How do you keep up?
That's what the market's doing. It's constantly pricing it in. So the market is our friend in the sense that it pays us a premium for participating. If this didn't exist, if it was just flat, stable, we wouldn't get a nice return. We would get, in the long run, a risk-free rate of return, right? That wouldn't be supporting our long-term wealth goals. So.
And Tassos, I want to bring you in. I want to talk about Iran a little bit. How is the war in Iran affecting global markets?
Well, the markets react to events that have not been anticipated. Mm-hmm. And obviously, no one anticipated what is currently happening. Mm-hmm. Markets in general are volatile because they constantly and continuously try to reevaluate what is happening. Unpredictable. But what is interesting to note is that as a result of the Iran war, the volatility has increased from what it's usually around 20 points to approximately 30. I do not want any of the viewers to conclude that this is a very bad event, because a year ago, when the Trump administration introduced the tariffs, the volatility then was significantly higher, and it went all the way to 40 points. So there is volatility. There is volatility because of the war. We live in an uncertain situation. But if you look at the futures markets and you look at the price of oil in September, October, 4 or 5 months from now, the price is expected to return back to $60.
I actually wanted to ask you about oil. What's happening with oil prices? Because
we
turn on the news and there's a lot going on.
Oil prices have been reasonably stable to approximately $60 to $70. And as a result of that, gasoline prices as well, because they're highly correlated. But now that the Iranians are trying to put torpedoes and other mines in the straits, 20% of the oil goes through this region. Mm-hmm. So there is a worry about the supply of approximately 20% of the volume. And as a result of that, the price has jumped from 60 to 90.
Does that affect the economy?
It affects the economy probably at 0.1% per year. So it does, but not really significantly. But the markets love excitement, and I think right now we're trying to assess the durability of the difficulties that we're experiencing.
Keeping a close eye. And Danielle, people sometimes say the stock market is not the economy. Outside of the stock market, what else is affecting how people feel about the economy now, would you say?
Outside of it, how's it making it feel? I'd say the economy and the market are not one and the same. So the economy is looking at, and this is Tasso's expertise, where are we at today? Where's the figures? Where's everything stand today? Again, the market is a pricing mechanism. What's those expectations for the future? And when we do say that things, you open with the market's off a couple of % for the year, right? That sounds negative. If you have a diversified portfolio, and you own not only stocks, you own bonds. Bonds get returns in the way of price appreciation and income. And we have some income this year to make those positive. international markets have done very well, and you have the benefit of currency appreciation, bringing those back to US dollars. So you can still have a diversified portfolio and have a positive rate of return right now. So the whole point of this is don't react with emotion. Know that volatility exists. Know that for the long term you're rewarded for that. But the discipline, having a plan and following it at times like this when you're tested, you are rewarded in the long run.
You can understand why people are nervous.
I can understand why you're nervous. Please do not react based on that. Seek out advice, follow your plan, connect with your financial advisor.
And Tess, you talked a little bit about stability. How can federal policy stabilize or destabilize the economy?
Well, we are very, very fortunate to have institutions that look at the economy and try to regulate it. And one, of course, is the Federal Reserve. And the Federal Reserve plays the very important role when the economy is weak to try to stimulate it a little bit. And when things are like during periods of inflation, to try to regulate it. The analogy I would like to mention between the economy and the stock market is like the rabbit and the turtle.
That's a good, okay, that's...
The turtle is the economy that moves very, very slowly day to day. The stock market tries to see into the future and run very fast. And many times gets too excited and then has to slow down and return back. Overall, the US economy today is doing very well. Unemployment remains low. Inflation is not down to 2%. Which is ideal, but it's approximately 2.5 by some measures. And the Federal Reserve remains independent and willing to do its job.
I really appreciate the way you break it down. Now, we only have a couple seconds, Danielle, but what I want to ask is what advice would you give to people who feel like they're struggling right now in this economy?
If you're struggling, anything you can do in terms of putting away and saving for your future times of volatility can create wealth. If you're at the point where you're pulling income from your portfolio, stick to the plan. Don't react to what's going on.
Well, thank you both for taking the time and trying to break this down for us. There's a lot going on. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Joanna.
Up next, looking at the Chicago blues scene. This weekend is the Oscars, and the film Sinners is up for Best Picture. The film has a record 16 nominations, and it stars Michael B. Jordan, and by bringing blues music to the big screen, it's helped promote the art form. But while the blues enjoys its moment in the mainstream media, our next guests have been dedicated to preserving its history and evolution for quite some time. They are guardians of a sound that continues to shape American music, and they are Emmy award-winning and three-time Grammy-nominated blues musician and local legend Billy Branch, who has played with artists like Buddy Guy and Muddy Waters, and Diamond Dixon, executive director of the nonprofit organization Chicago Blues Revival. It uses the blues to support its local Chicago neighborhoods that created the music, and musician, guitarist, and producer Melody Angel. And joining us via Zoom from Jackson, Mississippi, blues musician and guitarist Young Rel Davenport. Thank you all for being here. You know, I have to say that I feel like when I listen to blues, it takes me to all these new dimensions and it makes me feel all sorts of things. It brings you back, all these kind of emotions. Melody, would you say that's a good description? How does it make you feel when you're performing on stage?
Yeah, it's passion. I always think of freeness, of being very passionate with my emotions, and it's about storytelling as well. And so you get to tell your story and just bare your soul.
I love that. That's how exactly it makes me feel when I listen to it. I want to bring it back a little bit. Diamond, briefly tell us about the blues music scene and how it ended up in Chicago. I know it's not a long history,
right?
But what would you say is like the short version?
So shorter version, let's kind of take it back to the Great Migration. So, you know, thousands of African Americans moved from the South, or you'll hear like Delta, Mississippi area, migrated here to the Midwest, Chicago, just for better opportunity for that, you know, era of freedom that they weren't really getting in the South. And with that, they're bringing that Delta blues, traditional blues sound here, but Chicago's loud, it's busy, right? And so this is where blues got plugged in, got electrified, just because it matches the energy of the town. And so that is where and how Chicago blues derived and where it came from.
I love that. And Billy, how would you describe that defines the musical style of Chicago blues?
Well, Chicago, like Diamond said, reflects the noise and the hustle bustle of the city. Chicago became the blues capital, which in turn gave birth to not only all the roots of all of the rest of America's music, but also gave birth to the British rock invasion. And one of the things that I've always found challenging is that Chicago is yet to fully embrace its legacy and cultural.
Especially with all the history that has here in Chicago. You know, I know, Billy, you brought your harmonica. I see it right here. Can you show us some of the rhythms that Chicago has?
Well, okay, the typical, when you hear this, you know you're... Then you go...
I feel like that makes all of us want to go like, hey. I love that. That's great. Good for that. A little applause. I love that. Blues 101. Ro, I want to bring you in. How does it feel being a younger musician playing the blues and, you know, stepping in the shoes of some of the greatest?
Oh, well, to me, I mean, it feels great. It's an honor, you know, and at the same time, I think it's, you know, it gives me a chance to, you know, teach people my age and even some people who are older than me the history and, you know, what I've studied and the knowledge I've gained from the elders in this industry, you know. So.
What is it like for you when you're playing on stage?
I mean, it's my world, you know. I'm a shy person, but when I get on stage, all of that disappears. You know, for me, it's a feeling, you know, and it just comes out when I'm up there, you know.
You have an alter ego.
Yeah, basically.
I love that. Melody, Muddy Waters once said the blues are the roots, the other musics are the fruits. How did blues music lay the foundation of all popular genres of music?
So if you think of music in layers, there's all of these different genres, right? But at the base of all American music, which is all of the genres of music that exist, the blues is underneath, musically. Like literally, the 12-bar blues can be found in hip-hop, in country, in folk, in Latin music, everything. So you can't have one without the other, and if you want more from music, I believe that you kind of have to start with the blues.
That's a really beautiful description.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about a scene in Sinners, Diamond. There's a line from one of the characters named Delta Slim, which reads, "See, white folks, they like the blues just fine. They don't like the people who make it. There is history of African-American blues musicians having their songs stolen and popularized by white performers." Can you tell us more about the struggle for African-Americans to own their music?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that quote from the movie speaks to it directly, where, you know, just because of prejudices and racism and things like that, and not even having the exposure as, you know, white counterparts, black folks in history across the board have always had issues with owning music, not even just from an exposure standpoint, but just from, you know, the things that they don't have. They don't have access to, you know, the managers and things like that, the financial components that it takes to build your business, that way. And so that is why you see such ownership and such pride when people are speaking about blues specifically, because we know that at the root of it, that is when that type of behavior began. But as culture carriers, we are trying to make sure that those things don't continue to happen for our counterparts. So
What are your thoughts, Melody, about that line in the movie?
Yeah, I think that for me it's kind of a call to action for us that are still moving forward, that we need to move forward together. We need to combine forces and make sure that not only that we get treated fairly, but that our legends, the ones that are still here with us, still creating, that they get their due as well. And that's going to take all of us working together.
absolutely.
Billy, I mean, you have traveled the world performing blues. What makes blues so universal for fans all over?
Well, for one thing, it's the only music you can say that you have. You can't say, I got the jazz, I got the hip hop. How you feeling? And it's universal feeling. You know, I have in Melody as well played in countries where they don't speak or understand English language, but the feeling of the blues, you know, transcends that, and they get it. I've done several tours in China, and people, tears are running down their faces just listening to the music.
I mean, that just says like the tones, the rhythms, what it does to someone's soul.
Right, but you know, the downside is that the blues is always relegated to the bottom rung of the ladder. Even in the Grammys, the recent Grammys, they mentioned all the other genres of music, but they did not mention the word blues one time.
So what is it like for you to know, like a movie like Sinners, you know, specifically centered on blues?
That is very encouraging. And the fact that Buddy Guy makes a cameo and Kingfish makes a cameo and the soundtrack is blues based, it makes maybe Hollywood and maybe the powers that be are taking a closer and a better look.
It's almost like about time.
Yeah, yeah, because the blues has always been, you know, suppressed.
You laugh because it's almost like, yes, we've been here.
It's like the running joke.
That is very interesting. Harrell, I want to bring you, what do you think about the current state of blues music?
Well, I think, you know, now that we've got a lot of people, especially young people, playing the blues. Not only
Because
myself,
you're 19, correct?
Yes, ma'am. But you've got a lot of people like Stephen Hull and Melody Angel, of course, and myself and so many others. Young guys and women and young African Americans, especially, who are getting into the blues, you know, whereas, you know, like 15 years ago, I can even say, even though I'm only 19, that I wasn't seeing it. And so it's really rising. And then we've got other people from all over the world who are playing, and I think the movie Sinners just is probably helping, you know, catapult the next generation of that, you know.
I mean, Billy, what is it like for you to see such a young musician, 19 years old?
Listen,
Can you remember when you were 19?
I can. Yes, I can. I've taught blues all right, I'm gonna take I've taught blues in schools since 1978, and my wife and I have the privilege. He stays with us when he comes to visit, and I can't say enough about him, but it does my heart good to see these young folk, and they're coming in strong, they're coming in knowledgeable, they're coming in skilled, they know the history, and they're learning, and passionate. And so I'm happy.
I love that.
I told Real, I said, boy, you know how long I've been waiting for you cats to show up.
That's awesome.
And now they're coming.
That's really awesome.
Yeah.
You paved the way.
Well,
One of them, honestly.
thank you.
And Diamond, I want to ask, what could the city of Chicago be doing more, you know, to honor the legacy of blues?
And investing in the communities where the blues started and lived. You know, Chicago Blues Festival is, if it's not like the biggest, you know, festival I think in the United States, maybe like even the world when it comes to blues. And so Chicago gets a lot of commerce based on that. And so, you know, with this I guess, emergence of the interest of blues, I'm hoping that taps Chicago on the shoulder to begin to show up and invest in these communities. We need commerce on top of the culture as well.
Melody, what about you? You're born in Chicago, correct?
Yeah.
How would you say,
I think that making sure that music is in schools and that our history is preserved, our music history, as well as our Black history, for CPS. I think way more money needs to go into that because it's an empowering factor. Like knowing, like I discovered all of this on YouTube. But what if I could also discover it in a classroom? And what if they also handed me an instrument that I could play and get inspired from? So I think that more needs to be done for our youth.
Beautiful. We only have a couple seconds
Can I
left.
just say one? When you go to New Orleans or Memphis, as soon as you get off the plane, in the airport, you see the memorabilia, you see the images, you hear the music pipe. And Chicago is missing the boat. Buddy Guy just did an interview recently. He just a presentation to the city council, and he stated as much. Chicago is yet to really embrace its blues cultural heritage.
Well, thank you so much. We're going to have to leave it at that. Thank you so much. It was so insightful.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate you
Thank you.
coming in. And we're back to wrap things up right after this.
Reflecting the people and perspectives that make up our communities, this story is part of Chicago Tonight, Black Voices.
And that's our show for this Thursday night. Join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 7 for the Weekend Review. Now, if it's okay with Billy, he's going to play us out. His latest album is called The Blues Is My Biography. Now, from all of us here, that's his album at Chicago Tonight. I'm John Hernandez. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe. Good night. Take it away, Billy.
Lay awake at night, false and loving, just so troubled. It's hard to keep my job laid off, I'm having double trouble. But hey,
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a Chicago personal injury and wrongful death firm with more than 40 years of experience in medical malpractice.